Energy drinks have a higher level of fortified beverages with dietary supplements that differ with high levels of caffeine nutritional supplements. Common reasons to consume energy drinks include increased energy, attention, improvement in concentration. Energy drinks contain levels of caffeine similar to coffee. Caffeine has a low toxicity and no psychological severe effects in adults. Caffeine intake from energy drinks represent less than 2% of the total daily mean caffeine values of all caffeinated beverage consumes. Energy drinks popular with youth are aggressively marketed to athletes, college students, due to the emerging market and their high disposable income. Scores of various energy drink brands are currently marketed with caffeine content ranging from 5 to 500 milliliters per unit. Energy drinks are not controlled substances, and the regulation of the energy drinks will vary from country to country. Energy drinks are rated number 2 as a common dietary supplement consumed by youth. 30% of youth consume energy drinks regularly. There is an energy boost for the drinker using a mixture of stimulants and energy boosters. Most of the brands of the market are large amounts of wholesome glucose brands that are artificially sweetened with versions like taurine, methylaxanthines, vitamin B, ginseng, alkali, insulcarnitine, carotene, gluconoctate, and ginkgo biloba. Caffeine as a synthetic alkaloid has a naturally occurring constituent of plant-based beverages. Caffeine consumption by the American public is 81% in soft drinks, 42% in energy drinks and shots, 41% in caffeine and coffee, 29% in tea, 14% in espressos and lattes. The main ingredient in power drinks is caffeine, usually amounting to 80 to 150 milligrams of caffeine for every 8 ounces. This is equal to 5 ounces of coffee or 2 ounces of caffeinated soda. People consume caffeinated beverages on average 12.7 times over 7 days on 1.8 occasions regularly. Energy drinks originate from Europe and Asia, and in the 1960s under the brand of Red Bull. In 2006, energy drink consumption increased 17% over the previous year to 906 million gallons in the United States, which is leading the world in total volume sales. Consumption of energy drinks and shots is 53 milligrams daily. The caffeine content of coffee can vary, ranging from 48 to 317 milligrams for each serving. Coffee is usually hot and consumed over a more extended period since the coffee bean contains natural oxidants associated with improved metabolic and cardiovascular health, and also because it's hot to drink. Both coffee and power drinks are consumed for caffeine content and likely used by people for studying. Youth are less likely to drink coffee and use coffee for sports and exercising. Caffeine use is used by 98% of college students with an average daily consumption of 196 milligrams per day. Caffeine is a stimulant of the central nervous system and is most commonly used in psychoactive substances worldwide. Caffeine is a substance that increases the heart rate and blood pressure and can bind to the adenosine receptors in the heart muscle, which initiates a second messenger system with cyclic adenosine monophosphate within the cell, mimicking the effects of the epinephrine. This can affect the impact of arrhythmia when there is an excess of 200 milligrams of caffeine ingested. Caffeine significantly decreases the reaction time in auditory and visual choice tasks at a minimum of 32 to 600 milligrams. Motor skills and other cognitive skills covering function like addition, symbol cancellation, card sorting, signal detecting, number cancellation are not affected by caffeine. When exposed to 80 milligrams of caffeine, the mean arterial pressure increases by 13.7% compared to 0.3 changes in controls. It is difficult to identify the constituent with energy drinks that produces these effects, and the elevated glucose level are associated with endothelial dysfunction and impaired function partially due to the glucolactones in energy drinks. Caffeine is an ideal stimulant, short performance that declines due to secondary issues with sleep disruption. Doses of 600 milligrams are necessary to reverse severely degraded performances. Lower doses can be useful in amending the changes that are a result of the shorter period of sleep deprivation. Too much drinking of the power drinks can cause epileptic seizures, reversal cerebral vasoconstrictions, and intercerebral hemorrhaging. Doses of 200 to 250 milligrams of caffeine can elevate an individual's mood, and the effects can last up to 3 hours. Higher doses, or 600 milligrams, can potentially create tension or anxiety while increasing the caffeine-related physical symptoms. Caffeine can affect alertness and sleepiness. Exposure to a minimum of 100 milligrams can delay sleep, while 300 milligrams can improve daytime alertness in both sleep-deprived and fully rested persons. 4 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight can create latency on the sleep onset. 250 milligrams of caffeine improves the daytime alertness of moderately sleepy individuals for 3 hours. Performance on tasks will vary on the amount of dosages received, and the variety of cognitive abilities will vary on mental demands. Large doses up to 600 milligrams are efficient in improving cognitive performance in sleep-deprived individuals. Choice reaction time requires little reasoning, but does require terrific accuracy and speed. Sleep-deprived individuals will tolerate somewhat higher doses of caffeine, and the effects are similar to non-sleep-deprived individuals given lower dosages. Caffeine can affect the cardiovascular system by raising the cardiovascular rate. 1 to 4 milligrams per kilogram dosages can have a mild stimulant effect. Acute exposure to caffeine, even for less than 5 minutes, can impair arterial endothelial functions in healthy young adults. 1 cup of caffeinated coffee prevents the flow-mediated dilation of the brachial artery of youthful individuals, while nitroglycerin-induced vasodilation was unaffected. Endothelial functions is an indicator of vascular health, and the abnormal endothelial cell functions is associated with vasoconstriction, reduced vascular reactivity, thrombosis, pro-adhesion, and pro-inflammatory. Caffeine can adversely affect arterial staleness, since caffeinated but not decaffeinated coffee acutely increases the aortic stiffness in healthy individuals. Myocardial infarction can be adverse effect of caffeine. 20 to 200 milligrams can elevate mood for 3 hours. The impact of physiological change on the caffeine version subjects. A 250 milligram oral dose increases the systolic blood pressure by 11 millimeters mercury, and the heart rate declines during the first hour during drug administration and above the baseline during the second hour. Regular users who were deprived of caffeine show an increase in the systolic blood pressure, yet numerous methods that were not deprived of caffeine showed no significant improvements. Even with regular consumption, drinking 500 milligrams oral dose showed no significant changes in blood pressure nor heart rates. Doses of 300 to 350 milligrams of caffeine do not affect steady cardiac rhythm nor rates, nor clinically significant ventricular or supraventricular arrhythmias. Caffeine intoxication symptoms appear at doses above 200 milligrams. There are anxiety, gastrointestinal upset, insomnia, and restlessness. There are acute and chronic headaches due to the pro-narcoleptic state of cortical hyperexcitability. Energy drinks can lead to strokes and epileptic seizures. Hallucinogens have occurred in an individual that consumes in excess of 300 milligrams of caffeine daily. The combination of cortisol and caffeine can increase the physiological effects. The combination of caffeine, taurine, and guarana promotes the superoxides and the catalase activities of the neural SHSY5Y cells. Nerve cells communicate through gaps in the system via the release of neurotransmitters on the axon terminal, adenosine that controls the energy and induces fatigue, and dopamine that include influences muscle control, pain, pleasure, and emotions along the synaptic cleft. The adenosine and dopamine regularly competes for the dopamine receptors on the dendrite and nerve cells. Caffeine will prevent adenosine from binding onto the entire receptor and cause more dopamine to become more active. There is sugar in energy drinks in the form of glucose, sucrose, or high fructose. Acute caffeine intake decreases insulin sensitivity. There is an increase of 5.8 in the insulin for every kilogram increase in caffeine. Energy drinks can promote urination, causing the body to lose calcium in urine and bone density reduction and dehydration. A large number of caffeine sugars and phosphates will bind to the calcium molecules in the bones, and the minerals is leached from the skin. The calcium loss due to caffeine consumption is faster than the body's ability to replenish the material. The body becomes more acidic, dissolving the bones and creating calcium ions that circulate in the blood and eventually gather in the kidneys. The ions are either excreted through the urine. Dehydration is caused by caffeine. The loss of sodium imbalance can increase the body temperature, heart rate, and kidney stones likelihood. Energy drinks can be associated with a 2.4 times increase in dental erosion due to low pH and the high sugar content of energy drinks that ionizes the protective enamel of teeth. Youth have obesity and fatty liver problems. Obesity is associated with energy drink consumption since typical energy beverage carbohydrates content ranges from 54 to 62 grams due to sucrose or high fructose corn syrup. These sugars affect the endocrine system's attempts to maintain homeostasis of the sugar levels by signaling the pancreas to release insulin to lower sugar levels and to stimulate the metabolism of glucose, proteins, and fats. Since caffeine stimulates the stress hormones known to affect insulin and the body sugar within the body, regulation of the sugar content is impacted by acute caffeine consumption, since hypoinsulinemia will decrease at 30% in the whole body insulin sensitivity. When the insulin sensitivity decreases, the body is less likely to absorb blood sugar into the cells to be used as energy. Caffeine reduces insulin sensitivity by 15%. Power drinks with high sugar content and the caffeine increases the risk for diabetes, mellitus, and cardiometabolic diseases. Beta cells located in the pancreatic islets synthesizes and secretes insulin and is used to keep blood sugar levels generally at 4.0 to 5.9 millimolar per liters or under 7.8 millimolar per liters after a meal within 90 minutes. Beta cells are comprised of 50 to 70% of the cells in the human islets. With type 1 or type 2 diabetes, the beta cells become useless and are unable to secrete sufficient insulin to maintain an average blood glucose, and the body is exposed to pure sugar over long periods of time. A balanced diet provides enough carbohydrates for an active individual, and energy drinks should not be used to substitute water in between meals. A liquid form, carbohydrates have no satiety and increases the amount of solid food intake. A massive influx of sugar upsets the blood sugar balance, hypertension, and increased sugar is not controlled. The combination of sugar and caffeine in the power drink will increases the blood sugar and blood glucose levels before a quick crash. Sugar with energy and caffeine is a stimulant, yet after 2 hours, the blood sugar uplifting effects cease and the stimulation wears off. This combination will create a desire for more sugars or more carbohydrates than necessary and provide additional motivation to purchase more energy drinks to maintain the stimulus. The energy drink insulin is used to stabilize the rising glucose in the blood cells, but the glucagon oxidative stress due to overproduction creates further restrictive oxidation species. The free radicals will damage cellular tissues. It is recommended that caffeine should be restricted to unique situations when sleep is disrupted and for the benefit of temporary restoring alertness and sustaining performance during a critical period of operations. Recommended should restrict energy drinks for the underage individuals since the long-term effects of heavy consumption are only speculative. There is inconclusive evidence that energy drinks will cause weight loss, but the higher consumption of the energy drinks can cause weight gain. Regulation of caffeine beverages is burdensome since coffee and tea is a natural constituent and caffeine is already widespread use. The European Union has recommended that energy drinks that have a high caffeine content should be labeled. Canada demands labels including Red Bull should not be mixed with alcohol, and the upper daily consumption should be less than 8.3 ounces in each can. The FDA has regulated caffeine-containing soft drinks as foods. Manufacturers have argued that caffeine is a flavor enhancer and is not a psychoactive ingredient. FDA recommended that caffeine and the eliminated maximum caffeine content of cola-type soda drinks should be limited to 0.02 caffeine or 71 milligrams. There is evidence that consumption can also result in feeling worse when there is excitation, headache, malaise, irritability. After numerous expenditures, the feeling of excitation has decreased, while irritability and stupor has increased. The change in moods are attributed to caffeine intake. Further doses of the energy drink can improve excitation, stomach aches, or shaking hands. Caffeine is never a substitute for adequate sleep. Some fears combine the use of caffeine and alcohol as a gateway to other forms of drug dependence. The consumption of energy drinks can increase the risk of caffeine overdose since there's a lack of adequate labeling and the consumers are unaware of the quantity of caffeine being assumed. To promote the energy drinks, producers touted the stimulant effects and claims to offer benefits, including increased attention, endurance, weight loss, and having fun. The validity of these claims remain questionable. There are concerns that the youth consumption of energy drinks, high caffeine, and glucose can be dangerous. There are recommendations that the beverages should not be used for children. The message should be enforced and consistent due to undeveloped and vulnerable bodies of youth. Regulatory actions are necessary to limit the caffeine content of energy drinks due to the side effects caused by high consumption of caffeines and sugars. Information labels should be used to inform the population on the hazards of consuming the drinks. The market should not appeal to vulnerable populations. Marketing has focused on the desires of people to stay awake, to complete a task, or to improve concentration. There should be more of awareness and educational resources that will put the emphasis on adverse effects and safe use of energy drinks among the youth to educate people on the impact of the power drinks related to nutrition, health, and wellness. Further data is necessary to investigate the acute and chronic effects of energy drink usage. The symptoms can include intoxication. Caffeine toxicity is based on specific traits that includes nervousness, anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, gastrointestinal upset, tremors, tachycardia, and death. The reason for the height of consumption of energy drinks is based on overdose and dizziness. Regular intake of energy drinks can increase the risk of cardiovascular disease due to the amount of caffeine sugar that can increase arterial blood pressure, heart rates, and blood glucose levels. Acute injection of caffeine has raised blood pressure and leads to severe adverse hemodynamic profile with augmented cardiac workload and diminished cerebral blood flow velocity. The high content of sugar in energy drinks with the youth is popular, can promote overweight, obesity, and dental cavities.